And welcome everybody to episode 24 of the HOU.SEC.CAST, the HOU.SEC.CON podcast. I am here with my great, close, personal friend, Sam Van Ryder. How you doing, man?
I'm great, Michael.
Good.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I always say this, but I am always excited about our podcast guests. And we've got Mr. Andy Ellis joining us today.
Man, what a great book and what a great talk, right? So really excited to have him.
Yeah. He's going to be closing out the first day with keynote. We're going to talk about that, talk about what he's going to talk about his book. He's got a book signing, all kinds of cool stuff. So let's jump into it. Let's don't make people wait.
Let's go.
Sam, how you doing, man?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited because we've got Mr. Andy Ellis, a close personal friend of the podcast, all around great guy, questionable taste in football teams.
What's wrong with the New Zealand All Blacks? Come on.
Oh man, you had to go there. Man. How you doing, Andy?
I'm fantastic. Well, they're my favorite rugby team because they used to have Andy Ellis as their halfback.
Well, and they do the cool.
And they do the haka,
yeah.
the tribute to the Maori dance. So
yeah, that's really cool. I like when they do. I get chills every time they do that. It's like that's just awesome.
Yep.
I want to see a SOC staff do that, like before every shift.
Right? That would be good. Just point to the outgoing staff, the outgoing shift, and do it.
There you go.
Now when I'm pointing at my engineers.
These incidents are coming your way. That's right.
Yeah, I will say, I know we're in the intro, but one of the best things we did when I was at Akamai was we called engineers during incidents and we told them to run them. It's like your code broke, you're running the incident, but it's 3 a.m. Great. Next time, fix your code so I don't call you at 3 a.m. Very effective.
How fun. Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh boy.
Well, as way of introduction, we are going to talk about Andy here in a little bit, but he is a partner at YL Ventures. And Andy, you're going to be doing our closing keynote on day one. You have spoken at the conference before, but in a virtual manner, even though we thought you were going to come in, you had some conflicts. So, but it's good to have you finally in person at the conference.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I was very sad when I had the conflicts and I couldn't make it in person, and I was virtual, and I appreciated everybody who'd helped, but now I'm going to be there, and I appreciate you letting me be on the keynote stage too.
Absolutely. No, glad to have you. You've done some closing keynotes and our keynotes in some much bigger venues than ours. So we're really honored to have you. So I appreciate it. Well, now that we got through the intro and got Andy introduced, Sam, let's talk about HOU.SEC.CON and say what the latest is. So I'll start off with the user group. We got the next one, August 29th. If you're not familiar with that, that is our monthly user group that we have. We're not going to have one in September because that's when the conference is, but we will have one in August. We've got Dennis Maldonado is coming in to speak. He's a well-known Houston cybersecurity, information security person. He's doesn't really need an introduction to most people in this area. He's the first one that won our CTF back in the day when we started doing CTFs. So I'm excited to see he's been doing some different stuff than cyber, building out a 911 center and things like that. So he's going to be talking about some of that. So I'm excited to have him come out and talk. So if you can make it to that, please go register for that. What else we got, Sam, about HOU.SEC.CON? What's going on?
Well, aside from me, because I'm the sales guy, right? So aside from me shilling the tickets and making sure people go buy their tickets, because yes, we have plenty more available. We are quickly ramping up into a critical area on ticket sales where there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be awesome. Get your tickets. Speakers and agenda are up. We are changing. We're adding people. A conference is large with 10 tracks. We're going to have people that fall out. We're going to have other things that change. So we're updating that agenda as we go along. So you'll see some updates there. So keep on top of it. We'll also have an app basically available for everybody to choose your tracks. With 10 tracks, it can be very hard over 2 days. It can be very hard to keep, your finger on what you want to see and do. And so this will help you plan your event better. So we'll announce that to everybody as soon as we get that polished up and done and ready to go. That'll go out to all our ticket holders on an email. And then lastly, we have the sponsorships that are all sold out on our traditional sponsorships. So the anchor and advocate sponsors, all the booths and everything for the most part are sold out. We have a handful of niche special sponsorships that are still available. Love the, anybody that's still out there looking to support the community and be part of our community. We'll encourage you to reach out to our sponsor wrangler and get some more information on that. And those vary from different price points, but sponsors are everything to help us run this account or run this whole thing, just because the ticket prices are so darn low, and we count on those sponsorships to really help us run the conference.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll mention this year we are doing a little bit different. It's kind of a transition year for us. We're going to have a true sponsor hall. I think we did that one time, and it really wasn't exactly that. This is the first time we've ever had a full actual vendor hall. No, we don't sell separate tickets for the vendor hall. You get your ticket, you get to go to it. If you're listening to this, if you're going to sign up for a ticket, be on the lookout where that sponsor hall is. We're going to have all kinds of cool stuff in there. The village is going to be close to that, where you can go to the village and do all the ham radio and all that stuff. We're going to have a nice lounge area. We're going to have 2 really fancy coffee bars. We're going to have 80s nerdy video games in there for you to go have fun. It's going to be a fun place to be. But again, those sponsors are what makes this, keeps our ticket prices low, like Sam said. So please make sure you go see those sponsors when you come out.
And if I'm hogging the Galaga machine, you can just feel free to kick me off and tell me to go back to work. So
that's like a capital offense, hogging Galaga, man.
Yeah. Well, if you can just put, if you're still winning, then you'll get a crowd around you and you'll have a bunch of cheering going on back.
Oh, that sounds like
we're dating ourselves a little bit.
Right? Memories. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm
going to bring a pocket full of quarters.
Yeah. All right. Well, now let's get to the news segment. So Andy, along with his questionable football tastes, he gave us an article with a questionable author, but we're going to go with it anyway. So Andy, in all seriousness, this is a very good article. It's somewhat about the CrowdStrike meltdown, but it has other like ancillary issues you're talking about in it. So give us a breakdown of what you were talking about in there and let's discuss.
Sure. High level, like we had this whole zero trust movement over the last 10 years, but we pointed it at our users and we based it, we shouldn't trust our users. And yet when we look at the ways that systems get compromised and companies get compromised, it always seems to be the admins that are the problem. And I don't mean the admins human. I mean the admins, the software, the technology, everything, whether it's SolarWinds or CrowdStrike, like we can just go through this list. But when you think about how ransomware propagates, like how much of it is using, flat AD credentials or an Eternal Blue style, compromise. And if we could just get to a place where we said, let's stop trusting admins, like let's stop loading machines with a stack of remote admin capabilities and let them actually run. Like I trust Apple more than I trust an IT team. Like let Apple just maintain my machine, like lock it down because it's part of my ecosystem. It's not actually part of yours, even if you're my employer. And how can we get to a world where we have zero trust in our admins rather than zero trust in our users?
So there's supposed to be, and I remember coming up in the IT world where I was at least preached to a little bit by some old IT admin or security manager, more IT manager bosses that talked about tools that would help you have that, where it would be, you would only get access when you were supposed to get access.
Yep.
But you're talking more about the admin systems themselves, which
I'm talking about the users. So my systems, right? So I'm sitting at my desk here. I've got a MacBook Pro over here. I've got a Mac Mini. I've got a tablet and I've got a phone, right? That is me. Like Andy on the internet is not a human. It's this collection of devices. Why does an admin have the ability to log into my machines? Why is there software running on my machines that is remotely controllable? Like there's this old school mentality that says like, these are corporate assets. They're not corporate assets. They're means for me to access corporate assets, but they're part of my brain at this point. They're an extension of me. And all of the weaknesses when we talk about lateral movement come because we opened these devices up. Like, let's just close these devices down. Let nobody have access to these machines. Like, have something that defends the machines, but that works for me. Like, I download it from the App Store, and maybe it sends a reporting feed out to my company that says, hey, by the way, he's actually like up to date. He's taken auto updates. Everything's good. But they can't push a policy to edit my machine.
So what about in the, like, we're not typical users, right? We know how to use
Yep.
stuff. Some of your typical users who just not as knowledgeable about the day-to-day operating of machines. And it's not saying they're stupid. It's just saying,
Right.
they're just not
There are
knowledgeable.
machines that take a lot of work to manage, but how
Yeah.
much of that work is because we've loaded them up with crap?
I would say some portion of it, absolutely. But if they don't know how to do some particular thing and try to talk somebody, I mean, I've been on a help desk trying to talk somebody through something versus having access to be able to control it and show them. Should
So
that be like a point in time access type of
So I
thing?
think that should be a point in time that is
Yeah.
brokered by the user,
Yeah.
right? So you might have a platform says, okay, you have a managed service provider that is your employer that
Mhm.
could do these things for you. Do you want them to do it? But honestly, every time you have to do that, you need to ask, like, what's really going on that we needed that access? And how do we just have less of it? Because every time you let remote administration happening, that's a hazard in your environment.
The thing that gets me here, and I don't have an answer. It sparks a lot of brain cells to go off, like all three of them. Is the concept of it. First of all, it's a role based thing. Like we have so many remote folks, and then we have people in corporate environment. You're in a corporate environment. You go to a building, you sit at your desktop or whatever. That's a different scenario than if you're a remote employee. And then at the same time, is it BYOD? Do I own my own device? Am I contracting? Am I an employee? Does my employer own the device? And if so, then they really should set the rights to whatever access I can have. What's my role? Like sales versus an engineer versus, software developer versus architect. Like, should that change or be different? Or, I mean, it seems to me
Nope.
that's kind of hard to blanket. I don't know. I mean,
No, here's my simple blanket, Sam. Like, you have an employer, I hope. Maybe,
yep,
somebody's paying
yeah, I
for
do.
your
Fortunately, yeah.
So when Sam Van Ryder logs in to do something with your employer, you connect to the Google Drive if you're a Google company, to Office 365, whatever. Who is the Sam Van Ryder who has logged in? It's
Well,
not
that's my
you.
device, right?
It's your
Yeah, it's my
device.
device. Yep.
And so if we're attributing your actions, Sam Van Ryder's actions, but they're your device's actions, why do we have a model that is anything other than the device is actually part of Sam Van Ryder? Ignore who owns it. But just from an attribution perspective, if a remote admin can act on my machine or act on your machine, then for all we know, that was Michael Farnham doing something, not you.
So it comes down to attribution at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
identity, we talk about authentication.
Mhm.
Like we don't want human-based authentication. Nothing that a human can do is useful for authenticating over the internet. Your computer is authenticating over the internet. We don't want you memorizing a password because you're bad at it. Right? We want your device to memorize the password. We don't want you sending biometrics over the network because they're non-rotatable. Use biometrics to log into your laptop.
Mhm.
So how do
And
you see how that would have affected the CrowdStrike thing? Lay that out for us.
right. So the CrowdStrike just highlights this one. Like it's a
Yeah.
tenuous connection, I'll be very honest. But why do we have EDR on every machine that has all of this access? Because it's protect against all of the other ways that machines get compromised because there's admin access. Right? If we can get to a model that says the only way to administer a machine is using the OS native tools, which Mac is actually pretty good at. Like Microsoft would like to be there, and I suspect CrowdStrike is going to now force them to basically kick everybody out of the kernel. But why were they in the kernel in the first place? Oh, because that's the only way to defend against malware that's also going to be attacking the kernel.
It's the only way to keep any kind of EDR on there from getting
Right.
bumped out in the first place, those kind of things.
Right.
Yeah.
But most of the EDR risk you've got, like, especially when you think about like embedded Windows systems that were running CrowdStrike that didn't even have users. Like, come on, this is like, what's going on that we're in this world? So my proposal is eliminate as much remote admin software as possible, get admins out of this model of owning machines. Now, if you want to have a white glove support organization for your users, like you can be the Geek Squad, that's okay. I think that's a great opportunity, but don't have that be like the default.
Well, thanks for throwing that. I mean, Sam knows we say this every time. We could talk about this as the main part of it and keep talking about it for a while. But I think it's an interesting way of getting people to think about how you approach this. I do think there's, to your point, from an Apple perspective, they were either brave enough or not as, across every area in business as Microsoft is. They're not as ubiquitous as Microsoft is. So Microsoft definitely has
You have to
issues
support a
being.
lot of things that Apple doesn't
Yeah,
support.
they really do. They're just more ubiquitous, so it's harder for them to make some of those decisions. I was listening to Risky Biz yesterday, and it's not specifically about machines, but they're starting to force some two-factor authentication in other areas, like on Azure and stuff. So they're making some of those over time, but definitely agree with you on the Apple side of it. It's a lot more locked down, and you have to have specialized MDM software and things like
Yep.
that to even be able to do it. So
Right, but and I hate the MDM software. It's like
Yeah.
you all of a sudden open up a whole bunch of
Yeah.
vulnerabilities for what? So you can decide when to install something from the App Store.
I get it. Yeah. Yep, you're right. Well, thank you for that, Andy. Let's take a small break here, and on the other side of this break, we will get into everything Andy Ellis. As scary as that sounds.
Terrifying.
And we are back from the break. Andy Ellis, again, thank you for being on here. Before we get into everything about you, I do want to say, for those who are coming to the conference, again, Andy is our day one closing keynote. But before his keynote on the 24th at 3:30, he's going to be doing a book signing in the Village. The book is, hold on, I got it right here.
1%
Leadership, 1% Leadership. I've got it right there on my bookshelf.
I've got it right
1%
there on
Leadership.
my bookshelf, but it's a little occluded. I just realized.
Oh yeah, you got.
It's a great book. It's a great book.
It
So,
is good,
yeah.
very good. So he's going to be doing book signings there. If you want to bring your book with you and get it and read it before and have him sign it, you can. We will have books provided there as well. Either way, you're helping Andy out. He can buy a pack of gum every time you buy a book. So we appreciate you doing that, though. And we've also, I don't know if we're going to do it. We're trying to decide if you're going to come in with and help David Spark on his the CISO series podcast. We'll figure that out.
Yep.
But you have been David's coming for with the CISO series podcast, and you've been a co-host for him multiple
Yeah,
times.
it'll let me hear the bumpers. A running joke is I don't actually listen to podcasts. I read transcripts. And so I did a live show with him once, and like he played the bumpers because we're in the live show, live recording. And I was like, oh, is that what the bumpers sound like? And he's like, wait, you don't know what the bumpers sound like? I'm like, yeah, no, I've never listened to the show.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Well, yeah. So if you're there with that, that'll be awesome. If not, you still got the book signing, and you're going to leave after that, so you're not going to be there day two. So if you want to,
I'm flying out on day two. So
yeah. So if you want to have some interaction with Andy, make sure you go to his closing keynote, and make sure before his closing keynote you get your book signed. So let's talk about you, sir.
I love talking about me. What do you want to know? Besides that, I'm a fan of the greatest football team in the NFL, the New England Patriots.
We'll edit that out. So Andy, tell us how you got here. What was your path into cyber and where you are today? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I was in the United States Air Force. So I'm in the generation where a lot of folks came through the military.
That's another strike against you. But
yeah, we like to take people who drive around in tanks and drop bombs on them. No offense to anybody who might be a tanker who's a co-host here. Weren't you a tanker? You're infantry.
That hurts even more.
So I was a cadet actually in Air Force ROTC. So I was at MIT, and I actually really wanted to go into planning. That's actually what I wanted to do. I wanted to, since I didn't have the eyesight to be a pilot, I wanted to maybe be a weapons systems officer and then go into battle planning. Like I thought that was the coolest thing to do, like great war games. And the Air Force had under the XO had an amazing program where they basically build out strategic scenarios for, how to fight any possible war. if folks who are old enough remember when the first Gulf War happened, and basically the Air Force like walked in and said, "Yeah, here's how we're going to go do the war," and like the rest of the military was like, "Wait, what? You've actually planned for an invasion of Kuwait?" And the Air Force was like, "Yeah, we've planned for an invasion of every country on the planet." Like, I wanted to be part of that team. It was really cool. Like, they knew how to do it. But I get this phone call like that summer. I was actually backseating in F-16s, terrifying, fun experience.
Whoa.
And I get a phone call from a guy who's like, "Yeah, I'm part of this new squadron that just stood up doing information warfare." And I'm like, "This is weird. Cadets don't get interviews. Like, you just get told where to go."
Mhm.
But I explicitly was like, "You're in South Carolina, which is like the one place on the planet I did not want to be." I'm like, "I want to go to Japan. I want to go
Really?
somewhere in Europe. I had all these things." And I'm like, "Yeah, by name request, we wanted everybody graduating from MIT with a computer science degree, and that's you."
Ah,
So I went. It was the first operational IW unit on the planet. Everybody before then had been part of an intel function. We were actually direct reporting, part of Central
mhm.
Command Air Force. So, like, I deployed into Egypt for the Bright Star exercise, which is actually my only deployment. But we had folks who were, in Doha, which is, in the news now for a lot of other reasons.
Yep.
And it was really a fascinating, great experience. Do hands-on, computer network defense. People across the hall from me were doing computer network attack. And when I got out of the Air Force, it's like, well, I should do something with this. I went to work for Akamai, and I was their first security hire. I ended up being the first CISO and was there for 21 years.
Good gracious. I honestly did not know you were there that long because
Yep.
when I met you, you were at Akamai, so I didn't realize you stayed there that long. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to get, and I've done basically every security job there is
Yeah,
just within one company. Because
that's
if it
cool.
had a security flavor and nobody wanted to do it, they were like, "Well, Andy, this clearly is part of your job."
Clearly, yeah. This is other duties as assigned. Here you go.
It is, and I have to say, there's this nice benefit to being willing to just say, "Okay, sure, I'll go tackle it. Let's see what
Well,
I can
I think,
do,"
yeah,
because you learn so much.
Yeah.
that's I was just gonna say, like the hands-on experience of being thrown on your plate and having to figure it out.
Yep.
And that isn't for, and just in the sense of, talking to folks about ways to get into cyber, like it doesn't necessarily have to be a degree. It doesn't have to be a, certification. If you're willing to do the work and get in, do something a little different, and take on things like that. I mean, those are great experiences, not to be discounted. That's
No,
huge.
it's huge, and I still remember even when we started launching security products, and I was the architect behind them. So I'm doing like product architecture, working with engineering to get stuff out there, how we support it, and I'm in a meeting with the head of sales, and he says, the product manager for this, I can't put him on stage at sales kickoff next week. You're going to do the sales kickoff." So, like, every other product has like a senior product manager who's up there, who's like, "Oh, they're doing the whole marketing spiel," and now, "Oh, Andy, that's going to be you." So I had to build the talk for sales. Um, I did a joke. It bombed. I learned a lot about what you don't joke about in front of sales. I said, "We're going to retire your quota with this," and like the room was silent, and they're all like, somebody was like, "You do not ever make a joke about quota with a sales rep until you've carried one." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, yeah. I'll confirm that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably not a good thing to touch,
Not a
but
good thing.
you know,
But now 90% of what I do is more product marketing and product
mm,
management than hard security. Now that I'm on the VC side of the house, but I would not have been
mm,
qualified if I hadn't said, "Sure, I'll go learn to do this."
That's a good point. Yeah. And you also got to build great teams there
Yeah.
from like all of your other like your field CISO type folks and that kind of thing too.
Yeah,
I
we
was
experimented with how to do different things, and it was
yeah,
so much fun. Like the field, what's now called field CISOs, which honestly is a title I hate. I actually think it's a bad title because 90% of the people with that title have never been a CISO.
well, I'm an advisory CISO in my day job, so it's I get it. I've had that. I was listening to the whole David Spark discussion about it today on my daily walk. It's an interesting discussion. I get it.
well, some of the best product managers and folks that I've ever worked with, and I've been in the product side for a good 20 years, over 7 companies or 7 startups at least, all of them had hands-on experience, in cyber. And, they could talk they could walk the walk and not
Yep.
just
No,
talk.
very, very
So,
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have to get off into that discussion, but I did understand what some people were saying. Like if you've never been a CISO, to having the experience in being a security leader of some kind, which I've had, is I think is definitely valuable to it. But I do agree with the fact that if you're not going back into a regular CISO role on a regular basis, you're going to lose some of that. It's really hard to keep up to date with what's going on if you're not going. Luckily for my day job, I get to talk to CISOs constantly, so I get a lot of back and forth with them, and I learn what they're dealing with. So it's a lot of fun. Regardless of what you think about the role, anybody thinks about it, it is a lot of fun getting to just.
Oh no, it's a lot of fun. Like I love that job. Like I was doing it for a while when I was at Orca.
Yeah.
But
That's right. Yeah.
I was their advisory CISO for 3 years.
Yeah. Was through YL Ventures though? Was it not?
I mean, I was sort of part-time at YL, part-time at Orca. Now I'm basically full-time at YL, with a little bit of, speaking and leadership stuff on the side.
Very cool. Well, so let's talk about a little bit, as much as you want to tease your talk. Obviously, we don't want to have all the spoilers, but give us a little rundown as much as you feel comfortable with.
Oh, I'm happy to. Well, the fun part is I'm actually still tweaking the talk, so it'll probably be different from what I'm going to tell you today. So I want to really combine two things for the HOU.SEC.CON audience. So it's going to be a new talk that I've never done before, but it's really the marriage of two talks I've done that have been very successful, very popular. So one is on understanding like decision making and risk and how humans make decisions and how do you sort of motivate your team and motivate your company to make the right choices. And then the second one, which is the leadership talk, which is like, how do you stop destroying value in your organization, in your business through better leadership, which takes the lessons of 1% leadership. There's 54 lessons in there, and it sort of, looks at them in a different light. So I really like it because it's not just, oh, go read the book, here's a teaser for it. It's, if you've read the book, this will be even deeper for you because I tell you how to sort of take those lessons and build a new Lego out of it. And if you haven't read it, that's okay. Like I give you everything you need to admire this new structure, I hope. And that's the one I did that talk at RVA.SEC. Like folks loved it there, so I'm confident that one would hit. But I'm really merging these two, and I don't yet have all the bugs polished out as I do the integration, which is how do you specifically lead from a security perspective. So while I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the personal leadership topics and just running a team, running an organization, what I really wanted to focus on is now how do you take that leadership style and apply it to driving change in your business. So understanding how to get alignment about risk, which, well, I talked about how to get alignment in one talk and how to deal with risk in the other. This will be the place that marries them together. So really letting you elevate your leadership practice. And notice I've said leader a lot here. And often when people hear leader, what they actually map that to is authority. And when I talk about leadership, this is not about authority. This is not this is not a talk that is exclusively aimed at CISOs. Like CISOs will get value out of it. But if you work, you are a leader. You are affecting how you and other people convert energy to value. And this is what the talk is about, is how do you get on the same page with people, talk the same language, change their minds, which you cannot do in one meeting. And I see too many security people who think, well, if I just walk in with enough arguments, I'll change everybody's minds in 30 minutes.
I call that the what did I used to call that? Basically the 80s TV, 90s TV show where everything is solved in 30 minutes.
Right, it's like the sitcom.
Sitcom attitude, right?
It's not even this. I guess a piece of it's a sitcom attitude, but in business we actually even have a term for it, which some people may or may not find offensive, but it's often called the "come to Jesus" meeting. Like, which as a Jew, I find hysterically funny when people use that. But it's this idea that like, if I can just make you see the light, like you will agree with me and you'll convert. And fine, let's leave that for religion. That's not for business. Like most people do not have this epiphany where they go from nothing to completely believing something different that fast. It's a slow change. And in security, we deal with long timelines. It's okay to change people's mind over a year, because the outcomes you're going to get from it are so much better.
And in the organizations I work with that are very large, they typically understand that. It takes a long time. When you're a large organization, it takes a long time to turn a ship, right? And especially when I talk about in my space, the space I work in, which is ICS. You're talking to practitioners that aren't
It's like a
security folks,
decade
right?
to
And
turn anybody's ship.
yeah, it takes a lot of conversations and a lot of relationship building
Right.
before you can get to that point to get them to buy into some things. And by the way, it's not all, they're not going to buy into everything. So you got to be willing to compromise. And that's part of that leadership attitude, is knowing where you're willing to make those compromises.
Yeah. So that's basically going to be the focus of the talk. I'm going to have a blast. My hardest part is going to be squeezing it down to 1 hour. Or I don't even have an hour, do I? 45 minutes?
45 minutes.
45, yeah, 45, 50. I think you leave some time for questions. So 45 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, if I don't have to leave time, if I can just run over the question time, I could take.
Well, it's also keynote.
I
So you don't have to have questions on a keynote. It could just be, hey, I'm up here to pontificate, listen to me, and then go to the next talk.
So here's actually my favorite thing to do for keynotes, which is, and I'll have my Twitter handle up, behind me when I'm doing it. But like, if people have questions, ask them in real time on Twitter. I'm not necessarily going to answer, but first of all, you can see other people's questions. But I am happy then to go, I will go after the talk and answer every question that comes out on Twitter. So you don't have to rely on, I got to get up in front of all these people and have an amazing question. If you just want to ask me the question live, I'll answer it when I'm done with the talk, depending on like who I'm going out to dinner with. It might be more exciting than the dinner.
Well, we do have some happy hours going on that night. So depending on when you're leaving, there should be
I think one of the companies in our portfolio is going to be a vendor at HOU.SEC.CON. So I think I may be doing their event that night, which if so, it'll be an amazing event.
I hope so. Well, I'll look for my invite in the email.
Okay.
We'll crash it. We can crash it. We
can go anywhere we want.
Absolutely. You are welcome. And in fact, what might be entertaining is they'll be doing another book that I also participated in at that event, probably.
That's awesome. Well, Andy, as we stated before, great to have you on here. Anything you want to leave us with before we close out here?
Well, normally I'd be like, let's go Pats, but I think we're going to rival for who's not happier with their team this year.
This is a good point. Yeah.
Right. But I think the thing I want everybody to take away is like every day you should learn something new. That's it. Just learn something new. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a little thing. That's okay. But learn something new today.
I agree with that. Well, I think out of the three of us, Sam's going to have the best football team this year with the Texans. So
it's kind of sad when it's because Stroud's everybody else sucks and you get better, right?
Oh no, yeah. Like no, you're actually going to have a good team. Like we're going to have bad teams, I think. But your team should actually be pretty good this year. I have a couple of people I follow on Twitter who are diehard Texans fans, so I know too much about that team.
I'm more of a college football guy, but that's okay. I live in Houston, support the local team for good or bad, and much unlike Michael Farnham. But
I've told my story many times. I have a reason for being a Cowboys fan. It's a personal family connection.
Hey, listen, last time I was a Cowboys fan, Roger Staubach was still throwing to Tony Dorsett, and so that was a long time ago.
Wait, you used to be a Cowboys fan and you've changed? I don't know that that's acceptable.
That was before I moved to Houston and before the Texans existed. So that was a long time ago. So,
by the way, I've met Tony Dorsett. He's a good dude. So,
almost all the players are fantastic human beings.
Yeah. All right, sir. Well, thank you again. Appreciate you being on. Looking forward to your closing keynote on day one and having my book signed and all that good stuff. Thank you, sir. All right, Sam, anything final?
No, excited about this. Great speaker lineup. We're very, very fortunate for folks like you, Andy, coming in to help us get this thing, with the bookends and all the content in between. So get your tickets. Few sponsorships left. Come on out and support us and be part of the great community of Houston.
I agree. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on episode 24 of the HOU.SEC.CON or HOU.SEC.CAST, the HOU.SEC.CON podcast. We will see you next time on episode 25, quarter century. Crazy. All right, everybody.